The corridor lights had already shifted into night cycle mode when the message arrived. At first, he thought it was a glitch. Human engineers were used to glitches. The alien flagship was a masterpiece of technology so advanced that half of it seemed to run on logic humans barely understood. Sometimes the system misrouted messages, sometimes doors opened when they shouldn't, sometimes the AI tried to optimize human habits in ways that felt suspiciously personal. So when his wrist console vibrated with a priority signal marked with the highest clearance code, his first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion. The sender wasn't a department head. It wasn't the ship's AI. It wasn't even a security officer. It was her. The commander of the flagship. The message was short. Too short. Human, come to my quarters immediately. I need you for something I can't ask anyone else. He stared at the words longer than he should have. Around him, the engineering bay hummed quietly, filled with glowing panels and floating holographic schematics. Most of the crew had already left for their rest cycles. A few alien technicians moved in silence, their long limbs and metallic uniforms reflecting the soft blue lights. None of them seemed to notice the human standing frozen beside a reactor console, trying to convince himself that he wasn't misreading the message. No human had ever been summoned directly by the commander before. Humans were valuable, yes. They were known for improvisation, creativity, and stubborn problem-solving. But they were also outsiders. Guests in a galaxy that had existed long before Earth had even invented faster-than-light travel. Most orders came through layers of alien hierarchy. Direct contact with the commander was unheard of. His mind began generating possibilities at an alarming speed. Maybe he had accidentally violated a protocol he didn't know existed. Maybe the ship's core was about to collapse. Maybe someone had accused him of sabotage. Or worse, maybe the aliens had finally decided that humans were too unpredictable to keep around. He swallowed, shut down his workstation, and began walking toward the central command sector. The farther he went, the quieter the ship became. The corridors near the commander's quarters were different from the rest of the vessel. The air felt heavier, the lights dimmer, the walls smoother, almost organic. Every step echoed slightly, as if the ship itself were listening. He passed two alien guards stationed near the entrance. Their eyes followed him in silence. That was new. Usually, they ignored him. Tonight their expressions, if they could be called expressions, looked tense. One of them tilted its head slightly, as if trying to analyze him. He forced an awkward smile. It was not returned. The door to the commander's quarters opened before he could knock. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. The room was vast, far larger than any human cabin. The architecture was elegant and alien, filled with curved surfaces, floating light orbs, and translucent panels that displayed star maps in slow motion. The panoramic viewport revealed the darkness of space, scattered with distant stars like silent witnesses. She stood near the center of the room. The commander was taller than him, her posture flawless, her uniform perfectly aligned. Her species was known for discipline and emotional control. They were warriors, strategists, leaders. Their faces were usually unreadable, their voices calm to the point of coldness. But tonight something was different. Her hands were clasped behind her back, yet her shoulders were slightly tense. Her gaze met his. Held it for a fraction of a second too long, then shifted away. He cleared his throat. You called for me, Commander? For a moment, she didn't answer. The silence stretched. He suddenly became very aware of the fact that he was alone in the most restricted room on the ship with the most powerful being on board. Finally, she spoke. Yes. Her voice was steady, but there was something beneath it he couldn't quite identify. You were working in the engineering sector. It wasn't a question. Yes, he replied. I was finishing diagnostics on the auxiliary systems. Another pause. He waited, unsure whether to speak again or remain silent. You are known among your kind for solving problems that others cannot, she said. He blinked. I wouldn't put it that way. You also exhibit unusual behavioral patterns, she continued, as if reading from an internal report. Humor under pressure. Emotional adaptability. Resistance to fear in uncertain conditions. He felt suddenly exposed. That sounds worse than it is, he said lightly. Her eyes returned to him. This time, she didn't look away. I require your assistance, she said. With what exactly? He asked. Her fingers tightened slightly behind her back. That is difficult to explain. He waited. She walked slowly toward the viewport, looking out into space. The stars reflected faintly on her eyes. For most of my life, she said, I have believed that emotions are obstacles. Weaknesses that interfere with logic and efficiency. He nodded cautiously. That sounds very organized. She didn't react to the joke. Recently, she continued, I studied human behavioral data. He felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. Your species displays emotions openly, she said. You celebrate them. You argue with them. You build entire civilizations around them. He shrugged. We're complicated. Yes, she said quietly. You are. She turned back to him. And something has gone wrong. His stomach dropped. What kind of wrong? He asked. She hesitated again. For the first time since he had met her, she looked uncertain. During my research, she said slowly, I attempted to simulate a human emotional response within our ship's neural systems. I wanted to understand why emotions seem to enhance your problem-solving abilities instead of weakening them. That actually sounds kind of cool, he said. It was not supposed to interact with biological systems, she said. He stopped smiling. And? He asked carefully. Her gaze hardened for a moment, then softened again. It activated an ancient biological protocol within my species. He frowned. Ancient how? She took a step closer. Ancient enough, she said, that no one remembers how to deactivate it. A strange feeling crawled up his spine. What does the protocol do? He asked. She looked at him directly. It amplifies emotional resonance across the ship, she said. He blinked. So, everyone's a little more emotional than usual. Her silence answered him before she spoke. Much more. As if on cue, distant echoes of raised voices drifted through the corridor outside her quarters. He heard something that sounded suspiciously like laughter, followed by what might have been singing. Alien singing. He had never heard that before. She lowered her voice. If the situation continues, she said, the crew will lose operational stability. Discipline will collapse. Decision-making will become irrational. He nodded slowly. Okay, that does sound bad. She looked at him as if weighing something in her mind. There is another problem, she said. He waited. Her eyes held his. The protocol was triggered, she said quietly, by my interaction with human emotional patterns. He swallowed. So, you need me to help shut it down? He asked. Her answer came after a long pause. Yes, she said. Then, more softly. And I need you to explain something I do not understand. He tilted his head. What's that? Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. Why? She asked. Do emotions feel so powerful? In that moment, he realized that the most dangerous system failure on the ship wasn't in the engines, the reactors, or the AI. It was standing right in front of him. And somehow, he was the only one she trusted to fix it. For a few seconds, he didn't know how to answer her. The commander of one of the most powerful alien fleets in the galaxy was asking him, a human engineer who still struggled to understand his own feelings, why emotions felt powerful. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. That's a big question, he said carefully. She studied him as if every word he spoke might contain a hidden formula. Outside her quarters, the strange sounds continued. Voices rose and fell in unfamiliar rhythms. Someone laughed again, too loudly, too freely. The commander's eyes flickered with something close to irritation. Follow me, she said. She moved toward a control panel embedded in the wall. With a gesture, she activated a holographic display. The air filled with floating data streams, biological readouts, neurographs, and alien symbols that made his head spin. "This is the ship's emotional resonance network," she explained. He stared at the chaos of colors and lines. "Your ship has an emotional network?" he asked. "Every sentient crew does," she replied. "We normally keep it suppressed. Controlled. Balanced." She zoomed the display outward. The network pulsed like a living organism, except it was glowing far too brightly. "After my experiment," she said, "the system began amplifying emotional signals instead of filtering them." He leaned closer. "Wait," he said slowly. "So everyone on the ship is feeling everything more intensely than usual?" "Yes." He scratched his head. "That actually explains a lot," he muttered. She looked at him sharply. "Explain," she said. He hesitated, then nodded toward the corridor. "On my way here," he said, "I saw one of your security officers arguing with a cleaning drone." She blinked. "He was accusing it of lacking passion," he added. For a moment, she looked genuinely disturbed. "That should not be possible," she said. "Yeah," he said. "Welcome to human emotions." She turned back to the hologram, clearly trying to maintain control. "The situation is escalating," she said. "Scientists are questioning their own conclusions. Warriors are hesitating before simulated combat drills. 2 navigation officers attempted to compose a joint artistic performance instead of calculating hyperspace trajectories." He raised an eyebrow. "That actually sounds kind of impressive," he said. She ignored the comment. "If this continues," she said, "the ship's operational integrity will collapse within hours." He nodded slowly. "So, what do you want me to do?" he asked. She looked at him again, and for a brief moment, her confidence faltered. "I do not know," she said. That single sentence shocked him more than any alarm could have. He had never heard uncertainty in her voice before. "You said you studied human emotions," he said gently. "What exactly did you study?" Her eyes shifted away. "Human stories," she said after a moment. "Historical records. Social interactions. Artistic expressions. Romantic narratives." He coughed slightly. "Romantic narratives?" he repeated. Her gaze snapped back to him. "Yes," she said firmly. "Your species dedicates an unusual amount of cognitive resources to them." He tried not to smile. "And that triggered the protocol?" he asked. "Indirectly," she said. "I attempted to simulate a human emotional state to better understand your decision-making patterns. The simulation interacted with my species' dormant biological systems." He folded his arms. "So basically," he said, "you tried to feel like a human, and your biology panicked." She stared at him. "That is an oversimplification," she said. "But not inaccurate," he replied. For a moment the corner of her mouth twitched, almost like she was trying to suppress something. He wasn't sure if it was irritation or something else. Another sound echoed through the ship. This time, it was not laughter. It was shouting. She tapped the control panel again, bringing up a live feed from one of the corridors. On the holographic screen, 2 alien officers stood face to face. Their voices were raised. Their gestures were animated. "I have calculated your probability of survival in combat," one of them said dramatically. "And it is statistically unacceptable." "That is irrelevant," the other replied. "What matters is how you make me feel when you question my tactics." He stared at the screen, then slowly turned to her. She stared at the screen too. Either of them spoke for several seconds. "This," she said quietly, "is not normal." "No," he agreed. "This is very human." She shut off the feed. "I summoned you," she said, "because humans appear to function efficiently despite such emotional instability." He laughed softly. "Efficiently is not the word I'd use," he said. She tilted her head. Then what word would you use? He thought for a moment. Adaptively, he said. She considered that. Explain, she said. He stepped closer to the holographic display. Humans don't suppress emotions, he said. We learn to live with them. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we overreact. But emotions also push us to create, to protect, to take risks, to connect. Her eyes followed his movements. In your species, he continued, logic comes first. Emotion comes last. In ours, it's the opposite. She looked thoughtful. And you believe that is an advantage? She asked. He shrugged. Sometimes, he said. Sometimes it's a disaster. She watched him carefully. You are not afraid, she said. He blinked. Of what? He asked. Of being here, she said. Of speaking to me directly. Of the consequences if this situation fails. He considered her words. Honestly? He said. Yes. He smiled faintly. I was terrified when I got your message, he admitted. But now, this feels less like a threat and more like a puzzle. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You find this amusing, she said. Not amusing, he corrected. Interesting. She studied him for a long moment. You are unusual, she said. He laughed quietly. You have no idea, he said. Another notification appeared on the holographic display. This time, it was a system alert. Emotional resonance levels rising. She stared at the numbers. They are increasing, she said. Yeah, he said. That's what happens when emotions go viral. She looked at him again. You must teach me, she said. He froze. Teach you what? He asked. She stepped closer. Her voice was calm, but there was something new in it, something almost fragile. Teach me, she said, how humans control emotions without destroying them. He felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders. You realize, he said slowly, that humans don't really control emotions. We negotiate with them. She frowned slightly. Negotiate, she repeated. Yeah, he said. Like, arguing with yourself until you figure out what you actually feel. She stared at him as if he had just described an impossible technology. The ship trembled faintly. Somewhere in the distance, a loud cheer erupted. She looked back at the holographic display, then at him. You are now officially involved in a classified crisis affecting the entire fleet, she said. He sighed. Yeah, he said. That sounds like my luck. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Human, she said. Yes, Commander? Her eyes met his again. This situation, she said quietly, began because of my attempt to understand your kind. He nodded. And now? He asked. She looked away, then back again. Now, she said, you are the only one who can help me understand what I have awakened. Outside her quarters, the ship's voices grew louder. And he realized that whatever he was about to teach her was going to change far more than just one alien commander. The human ran a hand through his hair, staring at the cascading holographic displays of emotional data. Every line, every pulse, every color seemed alive, thrumming with an energy that made him feel like the ship itself was breathing. Around them, the commander's quarters, normally calm, precise, unyielding, felt chaotic, as though the walls were absorbing and amplifying every spike in the emotional network. So, he said slowly, we need a plan. She tilted her head, her gaze sharp but unreadable. Explain. I can teach you to navigate emotions, he said cautiously. Not control them, because no one really can. But you can learn to recognize patterns, anticipate reactions, and not overreact. He hesitated, unsure how she would respond to such a human-centered approach. It's like debugging your own feelings. Her brows knitted together. Debugging feelings? Yes, he said. You isolate the problems, see where the feedback loops are going wrong, and fix them before they cause chaos. He pointed to the holographic spikes representing the officer's amplified emotions. See this? This is jealousy. That's frustration. That one looks like a combination of pride and fear. Her lips pressed together. And these patterns, you are confident humans can navigate them? He shrugged. We have to. We survive by dealing with what we feel, not by suppressing it. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then begin. Their first training session started with him walking her through a hypothetical scenario. Two officers competing for a command assignment, both emotionally charged. He explained how humans handle similar situations, through negotiation, humor, empathy, and sometimes deliberate distraction. She frowned. Humor as a strategy? Exactly, he said, smiling. You can't always reason someone out of their feelings, but you can redirect them. She was skeptical, but intrigued. And this works? Sometimes brilliantly. Sometimes horribly. He leaned back, rubbing his chin. The key is awareness. Knowing when an emotion is a tool and when it's a trap. They moved on to simulations. Holographic projections of the crew appeared around them, acting out exaggerated emotional responses. The commander tried to follow his instructions, attempting to mirror human reasoning patterns. At first, she was stiff, calculating, robotic. A flicker of impatience crossed her face. You are overanalyzing, he called. Let the emotion guide you, then adjust logically. It's a rhythm, not a calculation. She paused, then tried again. This time, her responses were smoother, more natural. He felt a spark of pride, partly for himself, partly for her. It was impossible not to notice how her posture softened slightly, how her eyes lingered longer on his gestures, and how, despite her discipline, she was learning to trust an imperfect, unpredictable human approach. Good, he said quietly. You're improving. She arched an eyebrow. You are easily impressed. Not impressed, he corrected. Relieved. They spent hours in the exercise, moving through scenarios, laughing at absurdities, correcting mistakes. Each time the holographic crew acted out an overblown emotional reaction, officers arguing with chairs, engineers composing operatic pleas to AI systems, the commander's lips twitched. A small smile began to emerge, though she tried to suppress it. Outside her quarters, chaos continued. The crew's amplified emotions were spilling into every corner of the ship. Rumors about the human capturing the commander's mind were already circulating. Officers whispered about the odd interactions between human and commander, unsure whether to intervene or simply flee. Despite the tension, she allowed herself to trust him. That trust, delicate and fragile, was something no human could replicate artificially. He could feel it in the way she followed his instructions without question, in the subtle shifts of her expression when she thought he wasn't looking, and in the quiet determination behind her eyes. Why are you helping me? She asked suddenly during a brief pause. He blinked. Because you asked me to, he said simply. And because you're not used to being human. You don't know how to handle emotions on your own, but I do. At least enough to teach you. She tilted her head, clearly pondering something deeper. And if I fail? You won't, he said. Because learning is part of it. You're already changing. For the first time, she let herself smile openly, a small curve of lips that seemed almost foreign against her usually stern features. Change is dangerous, she whispered. Sometimes, he admitted, but worth it. Their sessions became increasingly complex. He taught her subtle cues, like how to detect sarcasm, how to anticipate jealousy, how to use humor to diffuse tension, and how to acknowledge feelings without being overwhelmed. Each lesson built on the previous one, each small victory reinforcing her trust in him, and in the messy, unpredictable logic of human emotion. One evening, during a particularly intense simulation, the ship's alarms blared. Emotional spikes were reaching critical levels in multiple sectors. He glanced at the holographic display. Officers were arguing over strategy, technicians were crying over failed experiments, and AI units were producing illogical reports. She looked at him, eyes wide. It's spreading faster than predicted. He nodded. Then it's time to apply everything we've practiced. Focus, anticipate, and redirect. They dove into the holographic interface together, adjusting parameters, simulating responses, and directing crew behavior through subtle manipulations. For hours, they worked side by side, each correction a delicate negotiation between logic and emotion. He began to notice her reactions were less rigid, more adaptive, even playful at times. She laughed once, a short, genuine sound, and it startled him how much it affected him. Finally, the immediate crisis began to stabilize. Emotional spikes decreased, reactions became coherent again, and the ship's systems stopped overloading. The commander leaned back, breathing heavily, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. "You did well," he said, trying not to sound like he was complimenting her personally. She stared at him. "No," she said softly. "We did well." A shared understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement that what they had accomplished together was beyond logic, beyond protocol, and far beyond what either of them could have done alone. And beneath that acknowledgement, a subtle current of something else, connection, trust, maybe even attraction, began to flow, unspoken but undeniable. Outside the quarters, the ship hummed more calmly, but the echoes of human emotions continued to ripple through the corridors. For now, they had survived the chaos. For now, they had won. And for the first time, he realized that teaching her wasn't just about fixing a ship-wide problem. It was about bridging a gap between species, between logic and feeling, and between him and the most powerful being in the galaxy. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a thrill at the thought that he might not be the only one changed by this strange, chaotic, beautiful mess called emotion. The ship's corridors were unusually quiet, almost tense, as if the entire vessel was holding its breath. The emotional resonance network still hummed, but the wild spikes had begun to taper, stabilized not by brute force or suppression but by careful guidance and negotiation. He glanced at the commander, who stood beside him, eyes scanning the holographic displays with an intensity that suggested both relief and lingering worry. "Think we've contained it?" he asked cautiously, knowing full well that contained was a relative term when dealing with emotions amplified across thousands of alien minds. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied the network, adjusting a few subtle parameters with precise gestures. The colors pulsed in a more controlled rhythm, each spike and wave slowly returning to manageable levels. Her hands moved like a conductor guiding a chaotic orchestra, and he could see the faintest hints of pride in her expression. "Almost," she said finally. "But the network is still responding unpredictably. Even a small misstep could cause a cascade." He nodded. "Then we keep going. Step by step. Remember what we practiced." They worked side by side for hours, running simulations, adjusting protocols, and guiding the crew's responses. The officer who had been obsessively dramatic over a failed tactical exercise now laughed at his own exaggerations, guided subtly by their interventions. The scientist who had been arguing over conflicting emotional feedback found solutions through collaboration rather than conflict. Everywhere they applied human logic, imperfect, unpredictable, creative, order slowly returned. At one point, she looked at him, expression softened by something he hadn't seen before. "You've taught me more than I expected," she said. "Not just about emotions, about myself." He smiled faintly. "And you've taught me about aliens. About your people. About how differently you see the world." Her eyes flicked toward the panoramic viewport. The stars outside seemed to shimmer differently, like they had noticed the subtle shift inside the ship. "You are unusual," she murmured. "I could say the same about you," he replied, and for a moment, the tension between them was replaced by something quieter, warmer. The final test came unexpectedly. A sudden alert flared across the network, an emotional spike in the command deck itself. He and the commander rushed to the control interface, guiding the officers through rapid but subtle interventions. The human's improvisational logic proved crucial. Every action, every suggestion he made nudged the officers toward balance without stifling their individuality. The commander observed silently, occasionally giving a command or redirecting focus. Her usual aura of unshakable authority was still there, but now it was complemented by empathy and understanding. Where she had once suppressed her feelings, she now used them as tools, amplifying trust and coordination among the crew. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the system stabilized completely. The network pulsed steadily, evenly, no more dangerous spikes, no more cascading chaos. The ship exhaled, figuratively, perhaps literally, and the human allowed himself to relax for the first time in days. The commander turned toward him, eyes meeting his. There was a vulnerability there he hadn't seen before, carefully hidden beneath layers of discipline and pride. "You saved the ship," she said quietly. "And not by doing what I expected." He shrugged, trying to hide the sense of accomplishment swelling inside him. "We saved it together," he said. She studied him closely, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. "I called you here," she admitted, "because I believed you could help me where no one else could. But now I realize it's more than that." He felt a subtle tightening in his chest. "More than that?" "Yes," she said. "You've changed the way I see my own people. And perhaps, the way I see myself." He swallowed, suddenly aware of how close they were, not just physically, though the proximity was undeniable, but emotionally. The connection forged in hours of chaos, laughter, missteps, and learning had created something neither of them could ignore. "Commander," he said cautiously, "you mean you trust me?" Her lips curved into a small, enigmatic smile. "I trust you," she confirmed. "More than I have trusted anyone else in a long time. You've shown me that strength and logic are not the only ways to lead. That emotion can be power." He blinked, realizing the gravity of her words. The most disciplined, most formidable being on the ship was acknowledging not just human ingenuity, but human qualities themselves: empathy, adaptability, courage, unpredictability. All the traits her species had long dismissed as weaknesses. Outside her quarters, the crew began to regain composure. Laughter returned, but tempered now with clarity. Disputes resolved themselves, debates became constructive, and a sense of harmony, an unusual, unprecedented balance, spread through the ship. Humanity's influence had reached farther than he could have imagined. She looked at him one last time before turning back to the controls, a faint blush on her cheeks betraying the small personal victory he had inspired. "You have done more than repair the network," she said softly. "You have reminded me that life, emotion, imperfection, connection, has value." He nodded, a quiet warmth spreading through him. "And you've reminded me that even the most disciplined, powerful beings can learn and feel." For the first time, he sensed not just relief, but possibility. The crisis was over, the ship was safe, and something profound had begun between them. It was subtle, unspoken, yet undeniable, a recognition that in bridging logic and feeling, species and perspectives, they had both been changed. As he prepared to leave, she paused. "Human," she said, her tone light but firm. "This does not end here. You will continue to guide me." He smirked. "I think I can handle that." And somewhere deep in the hum of the stabilized network, the ship itself seemed to pulse with approval, as though acknowledging the triumph not of a single species or individual, but of understanding, connection, and the unpredictable brilliance of humanity.